Bill Browder, Freezing Order, a true story of money laundering, murder, and surviving Vladimir Putin's wrath. Dive into the thrilling world of Freezing Order, where you'll uncover the true story of money laundering, murder, and surviving Vladimir Putin's wrath. Gain insight into how American-born Bill Browder moved to Moscow and launched a highly successful hedge fund, only to eventually face the dangerous consequences of exposing corruption in Russia. This gripping account will take you on a journey through the political and financial systems of a nation under the iron rule of Putin, and the lengths that authorities went in pursuing those who dared to challenge the status quo. As this powerful narrative unfolds, you'll witness the personal sacrifices made by Browder and his allies in their quest for international sanctions, justice, and ultimately, survival.
The Perils of Exposing Corruption in Russia. This is the story of Bill Browder, a hedge fund manager who found success in Russia by exposing corruption in the country's businesses. However, as Vladimir Putin gained power, this approach became unacceptable, and Browder was expelled from Russia. Russian authorities seized his former companies and claimed $230 million in bogus tax refunds. Browder's lawyer, Sergei Magnitsky, was arrested after he exposed the tax fraud scheme and died while in custody. This book highlights the dangers of speaking out against corruption in Putin's Russia. Seeking Justice, a story of friendship, corruption, and tragedy. When his friend and lawyer Sergei Magnitsky was killed for exposing corruption in Russia, Bill Browder embarked on a quest for justice through international sanctions against corrupt Russians. With the help of investment analyst Vadim Kleiner and former Deputy Prime Minister Boris Nemtsov, Browder traced Russian money laundering and uncovered the tax fraud that led to Magnitsky's death. The courage of Nemtsov and the tenacity of Kleiner and Browder, despite immense pressure and violent threats, exposed the corruption within the Russian government and led to global sanctions against its officials. Browder's escape from Russian arrest. In the spring of 2018, Bill Browder was arrested in Madrid by Spanish authorities on the request of Russia via Interpol, on false criminal charges. Browder took to Twitter, and through the buzz generated, attracted the attention of the Interpol General Secretariat, resulting in his quick release. Despite his escape, Browder was constantly paranoid of being arrested by well-meaning police who are acting on Russian arrest orders. In 2012, when he pitched the Magnitsky Act at a human rights conference in Monaco, Browder declined staying in the country as he feared being extracted to Russia. During the conference, a Russian woman enticed him with several messages to meet up at his hotel. This was an obvious honey trap by Putin's operatives. Browder's story highlights Russia's questionable tactics to silence opposition and the lengths one man went to fight back. Browder's pursuit of justice. This summary follows William Browder's journey to hold Russian entities accountable for the crime and corruption surrounding the death of his colleague, Sergei Magnitsky. After lobbying for a law in the U.S. that imposed sanctions on Russian officials, Putin retaliated by forbidding Americans from adopting Russian orphans, leaving severely ill children without access to adequate health care. Browder's team continued to investigate the $230 million tax refund and discovered that $20 million was laundered in New York, leading to federal criminal charges against the Russian entity that owned the assets. This led to threats against Browder, leading him to vary his routines and hire bodyguards. Browder's efforts to bring justice has gained him media attention, but also put his safety at risk. Nemtsov's assassination and Putin's operation. The book discusses the challenges of convincing European officials to crack down on Russian money laundering, and the Kremlin's relentless attacks on associates of Bill Browder, the man who championed the Magnitsky Act. The book also highlights the assassination of prominent Russian insider-turned-dissident, Nemtsov, and the suspicious activity surrounding his murder. The author believes that Putin had ordered Nemtsov's assassination, which created a stir, compelling the Russian authorities to frame a group of Chechens for the crime. The crime scene displayed characteristics of a Putin operation, with security cameras in the region turned off, except for one that was blocked by a snow plow at the right time, and a street cleaner that hosed down the crime scene immediately after the murder. Fighting back with savvy tactics. In Red Notice, author Bill Browder's attorney, Michael Kim, uses legal jiu-jitsu in response to the Russian government's attempts to subpoena Browder and gather information that could harm his allies in the fight for the Magnitsky Act. Rather than refusing to comply, the two responded by submitting near 329,000 pages of innocuous but responsive documents in a file dump. During Browder's deposition, Kim advised him to waste as much time as possible by carefully examining documents before responding and frequently stating, "I don't know." Federal prosecutors also provided crucial support by asserting law enforcement privilege to not disclose ongoing investigations. By using these tactics, Browder and Kim fought back against the Russian government's attempts to undermine their cause. Putin's opaque wealth. Trust and wealth in Putin's Russia. In 2016, a consortium of journalists uncovered the Panama Papers, exposing details of Putin's corruption. Among those involved was Sergei Rolgin, a close friend of Putin and cellist, who held companies with billions of dollars in assets. Putin, whose $300,000 salary is not enough to explain his immense wealth, needs trustworthy intermediaries like Rolgin to hide his assets. The Guardian's investigation further revealed that Rolgin received $800,000 from the tax refund which led to Magnitsky's death. These details explain why Putin never prosecuted the fraud perpetrators or Magnitsky's death. Trust is the most valuable commodity in Putin's Russia. Targeting Bill Browder. The book highlights how Bill Browder was targeted by Russia's allies in the West, including unethical tactics by companies like Baker Hostetler, a smear campaign by Glenn Simpson of Fusion GPS, and an orchestrated attempt by Russian attorney Natalia Veselnitskaya to reverse a crackdown on Putin's laundered money. Bill Browder, an American financier, was targeted by Russia and its American allies in an attempt to silence him and discredit his work. One such example is Baker Hostetler, who used unethical tactics while defending Russia in a criminal case. Similarly, then U.S. Representative Dana Rohrabacher and congressional staffer Paul Behrens summoned Browder to testify in a House subcommittee on Europe and Eurasia. Their plan was to show a film accusing Browder of masterminding a $230 million tax fraud and grill him. Browder was able to dodge that trap but had to be on guard against Putin's well-paid allies constantly. Glenn Simpson, the reporter-turned-mudslinger who ran Fusion GPS, was also involved in a smear campaign against Browder. In 2016, Russian attorney Natalia Veselnitskaya met with Donald Trump Jr., Jared Kushner, and Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort at Trump Tower. The meeting was ostensibly about the Magnitsky Act, but Trump Jr. claimed it was about adoption. President Trump later had a private conversation with Putin during a G20 summit and similarly claimed that the topic was adoption. The book describes these events as a game of whack-a-mole, where Browder was constantly targeted by Russia's allies in the West. Uncovering Putin's propaganda. The book explores the use of propaganda and disinformation by the Russian government, particularly in the case of the Magnitsky Act. One example of this is the 2-hour film created by Russian director Andrei Nekrasov, which attempted to exonerate Putin and Rolgin in Magnitsky's death. Despite being called out as propaganda, Putin continued to pressure Trump on the Magnitsky Act. Further evidence of Putin's money laundering also emerged, with Danske Bank reporting handling $234 billion in dirty money leaving Russia over a 10-year period. This scandal forced the European Union to consider their own Magnitsky Act.
After journeying through this exposé of political corruption and the fight for justice in freezing order, readers are left with the stark reality of what it is like to be a target of Putin's wrath. Bill Browder and his partner's experiences showcase unyielding determination and resilience in the face of adversity. From seeking justice for the brutal murder of Sergei Magnitsky to uncovering multi-billion-dollar money laundering schemes, this story illustrates the power of a few individuals to challenge a system plagued by corruption. Browder and his allies take on the monumental task of introducing international sanctions against corrupt Russians, defying and incurring continuous retaliations from an iron-fisted dictator. Ultimately, This riveting account serves as a testament to the indomitable spirit needed to challenge the corruption that pervades both financial systems and political regimes.